Welcome to the Savvy Dentist podcast with Dr. Jesse Green, the show where great dentistry meets great business. Listen in each week as we bring you an inspiring person who will share their story, ideas and business techniques to help you create a practice and a life you love. And now introducing your host, Dr. Jesse Green.
Hello everyone, it's Jesse Green. Welcome back to SavvyDentist.com and to the Savvy Dentist podcast. It is wonderful to have you here for another episode of our show. Now, all of us understand the power of publicity. All of us understand that public relations and publicity can make celebrities out of nothing. We've seen it over the years with the Kardashians and many other people that we're all familiar with from the TV. But of course, what some people may not realize is the role of public relations and PR in bricks and mortar businesses, including dental practices. A great public relations strategy can help position your practice as the go-to practice either in your area or as the go-to practice for a particular type of procedure. Now, we see that coming more and more popular in dentistry, and my guest today is Larissa Banting. Larissa is a publicist and she's helped big brands like Bombay Sapphire Gin. She's worked with the City of Alberta. She's worked with children's festivals. She's worked with CBC TV and a whole heap of others. And what we're going to be talking about is how to utilize PR from a dental practice's perspective and some of the things you might want to consider as you go about positioning your practice. We're going to talk about earned media versus paid media. We're going to be talking about messaging and how to get that right. We're also going to be giving you a download about all the different days of, like holidays of the year that allow you to insert a dental spin. And of course, if you want to find out more about Larissa and the work that she does, head across to larissabanting.com. She's a wonderful guest, a wonderful expert in this area, and she shared some real pearls of wisdom that I know you're going to find really helpful on your own public relations journey. So without any further ado, here's Larissa. Larissa Banting, thank you so much for joining us on the Savvy Dentist podcast all the way from Costa Rica. How's things over there for you today?
It's great. We are, it's sunny. Well, right now it's dark tropics because it's nighttime for us. But I live in the city of Eternal Spring, so I cannot complain.
Eternal Spring sounds like my picture of heaven. I love spring is my favorite season. And so if it was eternal, I'd be a very happy camper, I can assure you. Larissa, you're incredibly well known in terms of publicity, PR, and all the rest of it. And it's a really interesting topic. And one of the things that I think comes up when we hear about PR or publicity is we end up with a picture in our mind about what that is. And I certainly think that I've had impressions of what PR is and what publicity is. And perhaps they've been right in some places, but they've also been misguided in others. So I thought a useful jumping off point for our conversation today might be, can you tell us a little bit about what PR actually is? And then I'm curious to ask you, just on a personal level, how you found your way into this line of work.
Okay, well, PR actually stands for public relations, and that's really what it is about. I mean, we talk about publicity interchangeably with PR, and I think when we say the word publicity, people get these visions of paparazzi and red carpets and flashing cameras. And that is a part of it. But the bigger, much, much, much bigger part of it is individuals like businesses, corporations, everything from the solopreneur to dentist to, Coca-Cola, trying to work with the media to get their message across, right? To let the public know what's going on, what's new, what do they stand for? How can they help the general public? And that's really what it comes down to in a nutshell, is you are trying to get your messaging out to the public through the conduit of the media.
I think that's a really interesting starting off point. And again, I've got images of red carpet and paparazzi and flashes as well. And we will touch on that. As you said, it's part of it, but not the whole part. But just out of curiosity, how did you find your way into that role? Because it's not normally what you would think about as a teenager and going, I'm going to be a publicist. I'm going to get into that line of work. Or maybe you did, I'm not sure. But it doesn't seem like a thing you would do straight out of school. How did you find your way into that line of work?
Oh, it was a very curvy road. My parents were event producers, and my father, he did everything from making the advertisements to doing the PR to doing production work. So that's what I grew up with. But my dream was to be a professional dancer. And that's what I studied at university. I actually did have a career as a professional dancer. After I retired, I was in a semi-professional company, actually a Ukrainian dance company.
Oh, wow.
And one of my friends had just graduated from the program at the university, and she was about to embark on building her own agency. She had her own business, but she needed to have someone else to assist her. So she approached me because I had done a lot of writing, and she was like, "Well, would you like to assist me?" And I was like, sounds pretty good. So that's how I fell into it, quite literally. And it just exploded. I, had some great opportunities, and that just segued eventually to I was the publicist for Alberta Ballet, and then for the Art and Theatre. And then opportunities arose where I was able to start doing publicity for television and film work. And that's called unit publicity. So while the cameras were rolling, that was my job. So I did all the back end work, writing the press kit, getting all the photos, working with the photographer for all the still photos. That took me to a movie of the week that was being filmed in Costa Rica. And I met this really cute guy who was one of the actors on set and decided to leave the cold, wintry abyss of Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. Mm-hmm. And if you've ever been to Edmonton, it's the same latitude as Moscow, 52 degrees latitude.
Oh, wow.
Cold. And 9 degrees from the equator seemed a lot more enticing. But, more importantly was, I met my husband. And so we married on the beach where we met a year later. And that's how I got started in publicity.
And what I really love about that is everyone's life journey is such a tale of twists and turns. It's never a linear journey. It's never I did this, then I did this, and then I did this, and the dots joined perfectly. There's lots of little side journeys, and I really love that. I want to just come back to what you mentioned when you were describing what publicity is, and you spoke about getting your message out through the media. I wanted to just start by asking about the different kinds of media, and then I'd like to ask you about what kind of messages, because it seems to me like we've got the message and the media as two very important components of publicity, and I'm sure there's other components as well. But could you take us through the different types of media? I know, there's paid media, there's earned media, there's, all those sorts of things. Could you just give us an overview of the different categories of media that people might be thinking about? We're talking to dentists, obviously. What sort of media might be available to them? What's going to be appropriate from a publicity point of view? And what sort of angles might they be taking in that particular approach?
Absolutely. So when I'm talking about publicity, we're talking about earned media. Now, most people, when they think of media, they're thinking social media, so that's TikTok and Twitter and, all of that, where you're the one driving the message, right? So you're posting on your account, you're doing videos or whatever, but it's you posting directly to the public.
Yes.
There's no in between. Same with paid media. So that could be like putting an ad on Facebook or putting an ad in Google or into a newspaper. Again, you're the person driving the message, because you can put an ad saying, "Hey, look at me. I'm the best thing since sliced bread." And as long as you're not doing anything that is untowards or breaks some kind of standards, no one's going to call you out on that. That's paid media. That's social media. Now, where earned media, which is what I'm talking about when I talk about public relations and publicity, is where you are going through like the gatekeeper, right? So like podcasts, in your case, podcasts, we pitch you. And I know podcasters typically can get anywhere from 30 requests per week or more.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
For one episode.
Yeah.
So you have to vet. So for whatever reason, my pitch stood out to you and you're like, "Hey, that story idea of this woman, this publicist would help my audience. My audience is going to walk away with something that's going to be beneficial to them." And that's the same thing that the magazines, newspapers, radio, television, blogs, they're all doing the same thing. They have an audience They need to serve that audience. So they have to give them the best content they possibly can. Now, in your case, yes, you're a dentist, but you're also a podcaster. But, you're not, your expertise right now is in interviewing. So you're bringing guests on who, you're not necessarily an expert in what they're going to be talking about, but you're an expert about how to interview.
Yes.
And that's the same for journalists. They're experts at writing. They're not an expert in dentistry or anything along that lines, right? Their expertise is in the writing, but they need experts to give them the background information, the interviews, so that they can write the stories. And I think that's what a lot of people get wrong. They think that somehow the media are like sitting up in this ivory tower. They have all the answers, and people are intimidated about approaching the media because they think somehow these people know everything about their particular area of expertise. They don't. They're an expert in interviewing. They're an expert in writing, but they don't know anything about dentistry. They don't know anything about financials or whatever it is. They desperately need experts to give them the material so that they can go and give that information to their audience. So this is what I want to try and get people to start turning their heads around. It's like, the media needs me just as much as I need the media. It's a two-way street.
Yeah, it's a very symbiotic relationship, that's for sure. And one of the things, you're right, we get pitched all the time to have people on our podcast. And it's a really interesting thing because we do vet people pretty heavily about who comes on our podcast. And one of the things that we notice is that when we're vetting people, and this probably goes into strategy for when you're trying to pitch to media, is oftentimes people will come on and pitch to us and it's a really overt, hey, I've got this thing I want to sell. I want to sell it to your audience. Can I come on and talk about my widget, my whatever it happens to be? And that's automatically a no. Like that's a like, let's not even bother talking about that. So I guess what I'm leading to with that comment, or where I'm going with you next, is, okay, so we've got people listening to this particular podcast and they're going, hey, well, I can see there might be a role for me to embrace publicity, PR, public relations. How do I craft a pitch? How do I approach the media that I want to be involved with? And how do I not make it come across as overtly salesy, because the media want to have value. They don't want to have a sales pitch, right? We're not going to turn our podcast into a sales pitch, right? We're just not going to do that. And I'm sure magazines and other media would feel the same way as well. So how would you recommend people approach media?
Think about the audience.
Yeah.
Because the media, ultimately, they are responsible to their audience. Because if they're not giving them content that is interesting, that is valuable, they're going to go to the next guy.
You're going to lose their audience, right?
Exactly. And so that's why, if you want to pitch your widget, if you want to talk, have the media say, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread, go buy an ad. That is not the job of the media.
Yeah.
Okay. They're there. You can approach them as an expert, but they don't want you. They're not going to be there to promote your business.
No.
So that's the other thing you have to wrap your head around. And it's interesting because one of my clients, we got her onto the national, evening news, the biggest news network in Canada, because we had newsjacks. And newsjacking is where you take something that's in the news cycle right now and you find a way to bring your story into it as an extension. Because you know how there's when the news story breaks and everybody's kind of talking about it, but then they still want to talk more about it, but they're trying to find new angles.
Yes.
That's where we call it newsjacking, how to insert yourself into it. Anyway, so it was oh my God, fantastic. She was on the 6 o'clock and the 10 o'clock news. And then another news station in the States picked it up. And yet one of her clients, who they had interviewed as part of the story, because they want to do a well-rounded story. So often they will bring in other people. And he messaged her and he thought, yeah, it was pretty good, but I kind of thought they're going to talk more about your business. I thought they're going to promote your business. And I was just like, that's not the media's job.
No, it's not.
If you want that, you buy a commercial.
Yeah.
So you were there. I said, you were there to be the expert, to give, what's going on, to give a different perspective. They're not there to promote your company.
Yeah.
And so if you can go at it from that perspective and look at yourself as being a partner with the media to provide the most interesting information, the most helpful, the best experience for the audience, then that's a win-win for everybody, the audience, the media, and for you. And you're going to make yourself a very valuable asset. Like today, I just had one of a journalist I've been working with for years, and she's just reached out for the third time in 2 months for one of my clients. Because, this is a third story she's having her as an expert for, because she's proven to her that she's a very valuable asset for this journalist.
I have media, which is what we have here, but I also engage with other media sources as well. And there's one particular journalist that reaches out to me quite regularly as well. And it's really interesting. I think once a journalist develops a relationship with a particular person, they almost become their go-to source in a sense, because they've got a list of 10 people they could call, but they know that they could speak to Larissa, and Larissa's always got a useful piece of information or an interesting perspective or whatever it happens to be. And so rather than going through 10 people, they go straight to Larissa in this case. And it seems to be, journalists want to get their result quickly as well. And so building those relationships is an important element. Is that fair?
Oh my gosh, it's golden. If you can be that person that they know, even on deadline, they're going to get the information they need. You're going to come through for them in the clutch. You're going to go above and beyond. It's not just, here, let me talk about blah, blah, blah. But if you can say, and look I have these studies and this recent research that came out to back what I'm talking about, then all of a sudden, you were a font of information. You were the brass ring.
Yeah.
And they're going to want to talk to you all the day long because you're making their life easier, right?
What I wanted to ask you is, again, for people listening to this, how do you become publicity or PR ready?
I think a lot of people feel that they have to hit some sort of a yardstick, like, I once I hit 7 figures, or I have 3,000 customers or clients, then I'll be PR ready. And you know what? You're ready right now. The moment you hang your shingle out and people are paying you for your experience and expertise, you're an expert. And the thing is, everyone is on a different point of the journey. And this is what's beautiful about that, because I look upon the media as having like baseball. You've got the little league, you have your minor league, and you've got your majors. Now, the first time up to bat, you're not going to go and trying to hit a home run in the World Series, right? You got to start honing your skills. So you start in the little league, and you know what? There's nothing wrong with that, because first of all, you're going to get, your muscle, your medium muscle built up. But more importantly, is especially when someone like a dentist, do you really need to be on the cover of Forbes as a dentist?
No.
I mean, it'd be great for credibility, authority, whoa. But ultimately, is that going to get you more clients if you're a dentist in Sydney, right? This is why I think it's that niching down. And it's especially when we look at local media, or we're looking at, being in a podcast, in this case, with this, Savvy Dentist, is very niche down. Your audience is there. Who are the people who need your services? Go to where they're at, because they're the ones. It doesn't matter if it's there's only 10,000 people in that particular well, but if I go to the New York Times, there's 10 million people. Yeah, but there's those 10 million people aren't necessarily your client.
They're not your customers, no. Exactly. There seems to be like being on the cover of Forbes. It's great for your ego, right?
Yeah.
Right, and that's fine. That's okay. I'm not dismissing that. It's nice to feel good. But at the end of the day, if people are trying to drive business to the practice, if a dentist is saying, hey, it's nice to be on the cover of Forbes, but what I really want is more patients to come and see me and to accept a particular type of treatment that I'm offering or want to do more of, then really what I'm hearing you say is we've got to be hyper localized, hyper specialized, really know your niche and really kind of go narrow but deep rather than shallow and broad. Is that a fair assessment?
Absolutely. I mean, I'll give you one of my clients in just as an illustration. So she's a very niche offer that she does. She takes old chairs and refurbishes them and does incredible. I mean, we're talking artist level.
Yeah.
She was in Forbes a month ago, which was fantastic. But where she got the biggest bang was we got her onto a podcast for thrifting, because taking something secondhand and redoing it, giving it new life. So, super hyper niche down. And this podcast also has a YouTube channel. So when they film like we are right now, they also put it into their YouTube channel. Well, in 1 week, she had 1,000 new subscribers to her email list.
Wowzers.
She had over 100,000 views of the episode on YouTube. And when she opened her cart for her course, she sold 23 courses.
Wow.
Directly from that particular podcast. But the beauty of this is it's still bringing her new subscribers every single day. Yeah. Now, she didn't get that with Forbes. I mean, yes, it was great, fantastic.
Good credibility.
Yeah, exactly. But where did the money really come from?
Yeah.
The small, like that really super hyper niche.
Yeah. I really, really love it, because again, I've got a couple of people I can think of, and they do very well by being hyper niched and focusing on a particular modality. There's a particular dental practice I'm thinking of that is very well known for their cosmetics. And they are really targeted in their marketing. They know exactly who they're trying to speak to. Their marketing is absolutely on point. And you compare that to someone who's trying to be all things to all people, and different styles of businesses, and there's no right or wrong. I'm not commenting on that. But that knowing who your audience is, knowing where they are, perhaps going to a smaller audience in a sense, but a very motivated, engaged, driven audience will yield, in this case, better commercial outcomes compared to being on the cover of Forbes.
Right. I mean, there's definitely, if you have the opportunity, you want to grab that Forbes.
Yeah, totally. I'm just to be clear, sure. I'm not trying to say don't go on Forbes. Who cares? Of course, everyone would like to be on Forbes. That's a given. Yeah. But yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
I know anyone who's an expert or anyone who's hanging their shingle up is PR ready. What I wanted to ask you is there a toolkit that people should start building? Is there, like when we said, when the journalist rings up and you've got the studies to back up what you're trying to say and have a perspective around that, is there things that people should start, just gathering up a few pieces of things or jotting down their thoughts around particular topics? If you're going to approach a PR agency or a publicist, I guess that's their job to help you get ready for that. But just so that they can start thinking of what that might look like, what does it look like? Okay, well, I mean, when we start with a client, for example, one of the first things we do is we have them, fill out a questionnaire, because we want to know about them. Where do they go to school? What hobbies do they have? Where do they live? Because we want to be able to then take those nuggets and start using them. Here's a great place to get started for your first time trying to get into the media, is something like I call the low-hanging fruit. And where did you go to university to study dentistry? They all have alumni newsletters. They all have, some kind of a magazine, and they need to showcase the success of their former students, because they want to attract more students. They also want to attract donors, and they need those stories. So if you can find a way to tie in maybe, how your success right now, maybe because of a professor that you had, or was there something you learned in one of your courses, that is an amazing story. And again, it's a win for them, it's a win for you. And you're also talking to, quote, your tribe. When when you go to like a university, it's like you're part of that particular group of people, and they have an affinity for you. Yeah. And so, especially if it's local, like if they see like, oh, look at Dr. Smith, like he went to my university. Oh, well, I'm going to go check out Dr. Smith because we both went to the same school, and hey, we're both cool because we went to this particular school. Yeah. You know how that goes. So something as simple as that is a great place to start. Think about how can you help the audience, like, for example, understand like veneers. I don't know. I know nothing about veneers, and most people don't. Or, why is it important to change how often do you have to change your toothbrush? Yeah. What kind of toothbrush should I get? Well, like my daughter said, oh, Mom, I can't use this toothpaste you bought because it's whitening, and I can't use it with braces. As dentists, this like the back of your hand, but for like Joe Bolt, like public, like myself, I have no clue. Yeah. So
when you can go and start giving them explaining why, what you need to do, and giving them tips on how they can improve their dental health, you're positioning yourself as a trusted authority. Mm-hmm. And you're also showing them, hey, here's a couple of quick wins that you can implement to make yourself have a better life.
Yeah.
We're not talking, how to lose 60 pounds this year. You want to give them that tip, here's how you can lose 2 pounds this week.
Yeah. Larissa, that sounds fantastic. We started the conversation by talking about media and message. So I just want to come back to message for a second, because we were talking a moment ago off air about, all the different days of the year that are interesting and quirky and so on. I'd love to talk to you about that, but I'd also like to talk to you more broadly about getting the messaging right for the media. What thoughts do you have around that?
Well, I think that you need to be clear about what your position is, because I know even with dentistry, there's always going to be different camps of thought or approach or techniques. So, be secure to plant your flag, and then that's your message. And how do you back that up? Say nobody wants to be with someone who's wishy-washy, right? You're looking for someone who's going to have authority and going to instill that sense of yes, I can trust this person. So don't be afraid to have a strong idea about what you want people to know.
Yep.
Right. This is what I believe, and this is why I believe it. And I have the facts to back it up.
Yep.
Again, you want to position yourself. If you're trying to be all things to all people, you're going to be nothing to no one.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. So start thinking about, what do you want to be known for? How are you going to be that red jelly bean in a sea of blue jelly beans? Someone who's oh, I got to go see a dentist. They open they used to be the phone book. Now, of course, they go to Google and they see all of these dentists come up. Well, they who are they going to go to?
Yeah.
They don't know. So you need to start getting yourself out there as showing hey, this is what I'm known for. This is what I'm going to help you with. And this is my specialty.
So really interesting, because, some people might interpret what we were just saying, being the red jelly bean amongst the blue, as being controversial. But you're not talking about being controversial. You're just talking about taking a stand on something. Is that correct? Yeah.
Letting people know, what do you feel about, for example, pain management, for example.
Yep.
I know that there's different ways of approaching that. Well, what do you believe? How do you approach this? And that's being a red jelly bean.
Yep.
It's not saying oh, I think everyone should be put under or whatever, or something controversial. I have no idea. I remember when I was a kid, I was put under for cavities. I look back on it now, I'm like, holy cow, the 70s were a wacky time to be alive.
I grew up in the 70s too. They were a wacky time.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to make that differentiation, because I know that dentists are inherently a little conservative in their nature. Not all, but if I was to make a broad brushstroke generalization, dentists tend to be middle of the road kind of people, right? They're not too far to the left, not too far to the right. But what I'm hearing you say is, it's not a matter of going, everyone should be put under. It's just really saying, this is what I think about pain relief, or this is what I think about veneers, or this is what I think about this particular thing, and being okay with that, and knowing that some people have a different perspective than that, but being also okay to say, well, that's your perspective, but this is mine, and I'm happy to hold my ground on that, and I'm not going to be wishy-washy and go, well, it could be this or it could be that, because what I'm hearing is your audience likes to hear certainty as well.
Yes, absolutely. I think your patients as well. Nobody wants to go to a wishy-washy dentist or doctor who's maybe we could do this, but maybe we could do that. Because the patients don't know.
They're coming to you for that advice, right? They want you to lead them.
Exactly. You're the professional. You spent all that time and money going to school. Well, tell me what are you going to do? Because I don't know. And if people don't have that confidence, they're going to go somewhere else. Yep. Right?
100%.
Especially when it comes to your body.
Yes. And it's really, this is a little off topic, but it's often funny because in dentistry, we hear some people say, I just give the patients all the options and let them choose. And I think to myself, well, they want your input. They want your expertise, not just a shopping list of things they could do. They want you to take a stand and they want you to have an opinion about what's going to be best for them and then to be able to back that up. So that's a little off topic for what we're talking about. But ladies and gents, when you're offering a treatment, please have a view. Have a view about what you think is going to be best rather than, well, here's the 10 things you could do and, you choose. I'll do whatever you want. And that's insane in my view. But anyway.
Yeah. Well, and that gets into decision fatigue.
Yeah.
Right? Because if someone, we can only make so many decisions per day is what the studies say. Mm-hmm. And if you're coming to someone saying, well, here's a laundry list of 10 things you decide, they're going to shut down. And this is why, when we're pitching the media, for example, I always say, do 3 tips or 5 tips maximum, mm-hmm. because if you start giving them, here's 30 ways that you can have the best oral health this month, it's too much. Yeah. They're like, oh my God, I can barely have time to brush my teeth. You want me to try and come up with 30 ways? Forget it. I'm not going to spend time reading that.
Yeah, I love that. So bite-sized, focused, actionable things that make a difference.
Exactly. What can if they're going to spend, because again, we've got so much coming at us in this modern world, vying for our attention. How are they going to benefit by choosing to spend the next 3 minutes reading that article or the next 20 minutes listening to this podcast? What are they going to walk away with that they can turn around, implement, and see some small incremental change? We're not talking about, fixing the hair on fire problem. I call it the pebble in the shoe problem. Yeah. What can you give them as, here's how to fix that little teeny tiny problem. And when they do that, then they're like, oh, well, that was really easy. What else can you help me with?
Yeah, I love that. Larissa, we were talking a little bit about holidays and days of the year and all the rest of it. And you've got a great resource called famousin5.net/dentist. So that's where you can get the resource, famousin5.net/dentist, which outlines all these different days. And I guess this is a really good angle into having some conversation, because a lot of people might be thinking, well, how do I get a toehold? How do I get into the media, or how do I start talking about something that's interesting? And one of the things that is useful is going, well, maybe it's World Dentist Day or Brush Your Teeth Day or Floss Your Teeth Day or whatever it happens to be. And there's, I think you mentioned to me, there's something like 1,000 of these particular days. So can you just talk about what these days are and of course, how to use them in practice?
Absolutely. Well, for example, today is when we're doing this interview, it's the 5th of May.
Yep.
Here in the Western Hemisphere still. So, Cinco de Mayo. So of course, everybody over here is margaritas and let's taco about it, and not your typical day type of thing. So everything's Mexican, and that's a great starting point. So maybe how do you insert yourself into that conversation? Because yesterday was May the 4th, so it's Star Wars. I'm just thinking off the top of my head. Yeah. But there's every day has about 10 to 15, everything from Talk Like a Pirate to blueberry pie. It's crazy, all of these days, right? And there's stuff for dentists, there's stuff for oral health, whatever. But the trick is that the media, because this stuff comes around every single year, they've got to find a new angle, right? It's oh, Cinco de Mayo, what are we going to do this time around? So if you can come at it and say, hey, this holiday is just around the corner, I've got here's a great new angle for you. And if it's something fresh, they're going to jump all over it because oh my God, something new that we can talk about. We need something fresh. So if you can come at it, so something like Cinco de Mayo, just the top of my head, maybe you can find a way to insert oral health, talking about frozen margaritas. What does that do to your teeth? Or what's the best way to protect your teeth from frozen drinks? Or, the crunchy tacos. What is something how do you, maybe prevent damage to your veneers when munching on nachos? I don't know. I am not a dentist. I'm just pulling this out of my head. Okay. Halloween. Yeah. That's of course, the whole we're what are safe treats for your teeth, and how can you overcome with candy, and how long can you go without brushing your teeth after eating a sweet. Same thing with Christmas, wedding season. Anytime between November, like Christmas through to Valentine's Day is the largest number of engagements. So right after engagements, then you start getting into like engagement photos and wedding season. So maybe you can start giving some tips about how to have the best smile possible for those wedding photos.
Great.
Right?
Loving it. So, ladies and gents, there's 101 ways, more in fact, that you can use these days to, engage in conversation, to bring a fresh approach to it, grab some media attention. And if you want to grab a hold of what those days are, the calendar of days, head across to famousin5.net/dentists. Larissa's put together a lovely calendar there for you. And all you're going to be limited by is your imagination and a bit of creativity and a fresh perspective to bring this out. And then, who knows? Perhaps you can find yourself getting some earned media along the way. Larissa, we have covered a lot of stuff today. We've kind of been uphill and down dale, as I like to say. As we wrap up our conversation today, what would be any final tips that you would want to leave our dentists with as they go about implementing some public relations strategies and obtaining some earned media and publicity for themselves, for their practices? What final words would you have for those guys?
I would say get started. The best time to start getting started is right now. It is a long game. PR is not like running an ad where you're going to be able to see the ROI right off the bat. But once you start getting into the media, it is there. It's evergreen. It's always going to be helping your SEO. It's going to be when someone Googles something, you're going to come up. It's going to help your visibility. It's going to help your authority. It's going to help people feel confident that, this guy's been in the media, so he must be an expert, right? Don't be afraid to come up to be creative. Don't be afraid to call up the local morning TV show, because they have 2 hours, 3 hours per day, 5 days a week. They've got to fill that up. And by gosh, if you can be the dentist that's coming in maybe once a month or even once a week with some kind of a great tip to help the viewers have better oral health, well, you're golden, right? How much would it cost you to buy a commercial for maybe a 5-minute spot?
Yeah.
That's what you start thinking about that. It's and the other thing too is that being in the media, because it's like, that neutral third party, they're not going to they're not there to advertise for you. You have to be vetted by them. So that's considered 10 times more valuable by the media, by the general public, because of the confidence.
Yes, trusted. It's a much more trusted source. Larissa, thank you so much. You've been an absolute gem today, and I can't let it go unremarked upon that I was reading your bio and you did the PR for one of my favourite companies in the world, and that is Bombay Sapphire Gin, and I hope they paid you in gin because it's my favourite gin. Anyway. I
love gin too.
Anyway, I don't know why I said that, but I was just thinking, I love that. Anyway, Larissa, you've been a really wonderful guest and a really fun guest as well. So thank you so much for coming on, sharing your insights, sharing your experience, and of course sharing your wisdom. And ladies and gents, again, if you want to get that calendar, and I really think it's a useful thing to start thinking about, head across to famousin5.net/dentists and grab that calendar and start thinking about how you can incorporate some of those holidays into some earned and paid media if you want to go paid, but definitely earned media, and start getting your PR game up and running. So we'll talk soon. Thank you so much, Larissa.
Thanks, Jesse.
Thank you for listening to the Savvy Dentist podcast. For more episodes, go to drjessiegreen.com/savvydentist. And to discover how to build a high-performance dental practice, visit drjessiegreen.com and download the free report.